No Jaxson Dart versus Jaden Daniels, but we do get to see if Mike Kafka's Hard Knock speech got the Giants all fired up for some Giants versus Commanders on Sunday. And we're down to the stretch run of the season. Can the Giants close this season off with some wins? It's time for your Week 15 Blue Rush. Week 15 is here. The Giants are out of a bye week. What's up, everybody? Brandon London and New York Post Sports Giants beat writer Paul Schwartz here for your Blue Rush preview show. As I said earlier, Giants, Commanders on Sunday. Giants are out the bye week, and the Commanders are out of a QB1. So I guess this one should be a thriller, depending on how you look at it. What's going on, Paul? How's the bye week, my man? All rested?
The locker room was very loose on Wednesday, loud, louder than usual. Pool, ping pong, just, I think guys were happy to get away. Be interesting to see how they respond coming back. The season's not over, even though it's, 25, 30 degrees outside. So, we'll see how that works out. And you like Mike Kafka's little Hard Knocks post game the day after the Monday night game. As the son of a coach, you like that. Let me ask you something. What the F did you think about that?
I thought it was effing great. I thought he was doing what he was supposed to do. You're trying to get these guys, it's a reminder speech. One, we are what we are right now. We just got our butts effing handed to us up in Foxborough. So when you go away on this bye week, reset, refocus. Don't let me hear anything about any ATV accidents or anything. Don't bring any noise back with you. Just be ready to lock in for the last 4 games of the season and try and get some wins. Let's try and turn this ship around. So I saw all the vitriol on, social media. A lot of Giants fans were upset or unamused by it, but I like seeing that side of Mike Kafka because until he took over as the head coach or interim head coach, I don't know, I thought the guy was boring. But now you see a little bit of personality, you see a little fire in Kafka. So kudos to him for that rant that he went on.
When you're 2-11, you can get up there and you can be Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address, and people are going to say that sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
And when you're a winning team, the coach can get up there and recite nursery rhymes, and everyone will say,
yeah,
man, that guy's a genius. Look how he keeps them loose.
Yeah.
Look how he reads those nursery rhymes. So there was nothing Kafka was going to do or say up there to be caught, not caught, just filmed on Hard Knocks cameras that was going to appease anybody who is sick of this Giants season.
Absolutely.
The record is what it is. He hasn't won a game. So, he's doing his best he can. I certainly didn't have any problem with it. There was a lot of F-bombs in there. And I think it's naive to think that behind closed doors, there aren't a lot of F-bombs in 32 NFL settings.
Yeah, and it's funny because I like hearing that type of stuff because my dad doesn't curse as a coach, so he'll be yelling trying to get guys. Yeah, he doesn't curse. He'll try and get guys, and it's weird, Paul, because he'll be like, "Let's go out there and kick some flipping butt," and you're like, wait, what? Flipping butt? What is flipping? So I mean, it's two ends of the spectrum, but it's more than one way to kill or skin a cat. And shout out to Mike Kafka for trying to get these guys kind of revved up and focused going into that bye week. Paul, you mentioned you were Wednesday because I didn't get a chance to go into the locker room this past Wednesday. Jaxson Dart spoke to the media. Anything interesting about Jaxson Dart and his bye week and his mindset going into the last 4 games of the season?
Well, look, he got away from it, but he didn't really get away from it. Okay. You know what I mean? I mean, he seemed refreshed, he said his body was right, things like that. But he said he self-scouted every snap he has taken with the Giants so far. He said, I self-scout. I said, what does that mean? I said, every snap. He said, yes, every snap. Okay. And looking for, see if he could find similar mistakes, repeat mistakes and try to analyze those. He said passing concepts he needs to improve. He looked at some of those. And it was interesting to me that he said, you really check your mechanics to see if they're in the right spot. During the week, it's hard to do that. You're game planning, right? You're in the next game mode. Look at the film on Tuesday, practice on Wednesday, practice on Thursday, practice on Friday. You do individual drills, but it's about the next game and the game plan. So he said he really was able to hone in on his mechanics. But I also liked, Jaxson Dart didn't say we're losing. This is all terrible. I've been terrible. He said generally I was happy with the offense. We've had some explosive plays. He not discounted. He said other than this past game against the Patriots was, he has said previously was embarrassing. He said we've done some good things on offense, and he seems jacked up to finish the season strong. Um, I am not sure if these veteran teammates are. We will see. Like I said, they sounded refreshed and upbeat in the locker room. Is that a sign that they truly are looking forward to these last 4 games, or they are kind of mentally looking forward to the end of the season? That's always a hard thing to gauge. We shall see. We
You
shall see.
you didn't see any golf clubs, right?
No golf
Okay.
clubs, no.
Okay.
But there was, guy. Look, a guy like Andrew Thomas was sitting in his locker, looking at his phone, not partaking in any of this. Brian Burns was not partaking of any of this. Guys are what they are. Dexter Lawrence was not partaking of any of this.
Yeah.
But am I going to criticize guys who always play pool for playing pool? Am I going to criticize guys who always play ping pong for playing ping pong? I mean, that's always the coach's decision, right? You lose it 7 games in a row, out. These things are out. You guys don't deserve them. They're out. I've seen coaches do that. That's fine. If you win the next game,
Yep.
he's a genius. He tightened up the locker room. Um, you know, Play better, perform better, finish games better, and whether you play ping pong or pool, a guy's going to be sitting at their chairs in a locker, contemplating football 24/7 because these things are not available to them. Play better, have better players, win more games, coach better, do all those things, and doesn't matter what the heck you're doing in the locker room.
All right, so we got no Jaxson Dart versus Jaden Daniels this matchup. Jaden Daniels is going to be out. How are you going to watch this when it comes to, I guess, evaluating Jaxson Dart versus Marcus Mariota?
Yeah, Jaxson Dart has a relationship with Jaden Daniels. It's a on-field relationship for the most part, even though they both have the same quarterback coach, I think from high school. They were 1 year apart in the draft cycle, but it's interesting that they played against each other 3 times in college at different schools.
Mm.
I think it was 2021, I believe it was, or maybe 22. I'm not sure. No, 21. Jaden Daniels' Arizona State team beat Jaxson Dart's USC team when they both were starters. And then a year later, um, Jaden Daniels' LSU team beat Jaxson Dart's Ole Miss team. And then in 2023, they hooked up for an epic game. 51-49, Ole Miss beat LSU. Both quarterbacks had 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown. And when I brought that up to Jaxson Dart, he smiled. He said, "Yeah, I mean that's it's too bad I'm not playing Jaden Daniels this time." And he said, "Believe me, I brought that game up to Malik Neighbors several times, because Malik Neighbors was on the field, and Jaxson Dart scored 51, and Malik's team scored 45. But Jaxson said, "Look, we're going to play each other many times, 2 years, two games a season for the foreseeable future. He's looking forward to that. But we don't get him. Jaden Daniels is not playing. We'll get into a little later about the Commanders and their fall, which is quite remarkable. You have Marcus Mariota, and to me, Jaden Daniels and Jaxson Dart have a connection. Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston all have a
Yep.
both have a connection also. Do you know what that is?
What's that? They're the what
Well,
picks 1 and 2 in the draft their
yeah,
year.
1 and 2 in 2015. You know what I mean? And if you went back then, we've documented, first round picks always don't do great. First picks in the draft always don't do great. But you look at, Jameis Winston, number 1 in 2015, he was a Heisman Trophy winner. You look at Marcus Mariota, he was number 2 in 2015, he was a Heisman Trophy winner. Jameis Winston is on the Giants. That's his 4th NFL team. Marcus Mariota is now starting because Jaden Daniels is hurt for the Commanders. It's his 5th NFL
Mm.
team. So, when you look at Jaxson Dart, they traded up to get him at number 25. Um, where will he be, in 10 years into his career, like Winston and Mariota? Do we think he'll be on the Giants? I think we all hope so. Will he be on his fourth team like Winston? Will he be on his fifth team like Mariota? You don't know, right? As much as you think oh no, Jaxson Dart's not going to be one of these guys who just goes from team to team. Um, you never know. You never know. Like, I'm not predicting doom for him. Jameis Winston's a different player. Marcus Mariota's a different player. Mariota actually has not played badly this year for the Commanders. He's 1-5 as a starter, seven interceptions, 9 touchdowns. Can you make a case that these are the two best backup quarterbacks in the league? Maybe you can, even though, and they both had to start. Jameis Winston is 0-2 as a starter this year. Marcus Mariota, as I said, is 1-5. Two excellent backup quarterbacks, terrific team guys. Jameis Winston's not playing now because Dart's back. Marcus Mariota is.
And it just goes to show to those people out there that are like, oh, the Giants shouldn't play Jaxson Dart because they want them to lose these next 4 games to secure the #1 pick. Just because you get the first overall pick in the draft, whether you take a quarterback or not, I don't see the Giants taking Mendoza or any quarterback with that first overall pick. That does not mean that quarterback is going to go on and have a Hall of Fame career, to go on and save franchises. So to the people that are out there loud on Twitter right now, Paul, that say that Jaxson Dart or the Giants should sit Jaxson Dart for the remainder of this season, what saith you to them?
Stupid. Stupid. I don't
Wait, did you say stupid or did you say stupid? Like, how'd you pronounce that?
Stupid.
Yeah. Either way. Yep.
Look, I'm not calling anybody stupid. I'm calling that idea stupid. Can you imagine Mike Kafka and Joe Shane going to Jaxson Dart during the bye week and say, Jax, we love you. We want to protect you. We're going to sit you these last 4 games, okay? You're going to watch. You're going to mentally grow. You're going to physically heal. And you're going to sit and watch. We're not making the playoffs. Could you imagine what Jaxson Dart would say? He might demand a trade.
Absolutely.
He might actually demand a trade. I mean, it's just insane. Now, should you protect the guy? Yes. God forbid he gets hurt in one of these games and he has to miss time next year. You say, why was he playing? Because there's no playoffs. Jaxson Dart needs to play. Mm-hmm. That's what players do. They need to play. They need to learn. If they're losing a game 31-6 with 6 minutes to go, does he have to play? No, he does not. But Jaxson Dart needs to get better. And to get better, you have to play. He sat the first 3 games, and he sat 2 games with a concussion. That's enough sitting for Jaxson Dart. He needs to, maybe by the first game in 2026, he will have gotten all this, should I slide, shouldn't I slide? How do I deal with this aggressiveness? How do I deal with this blitz pickup? How do I deal with this loss? He can get that all out of his system, and he can hit the ground running in 2026 as a, second-year quarterback who's got the answers. So, I don't know how loud that is to him not to play. I know that's a loud, maybe majority. The Giants should lose these games for the first round, for the first pick in the draft. I always say this: if you believe that, that's fine. You're a fan. If you want to, bang the drums on that, then I want you to come in the locker room and talk to Jaxson Dart and talk to Brian Burns and talk to Dexter Lawrence and talk to Wan'Dale Robinson and talk to Jermaine Illuminor and these offensive linemen who get down in a stance 70 times a game and they're getting, having to prevent their head from getting blown up by some animal on defense across the line from them, and tell them, play hard but lose, okay? Because we want to pick. And I go back to 2019. I forget if we spoke about this earlier on the other podcast. What happened in 2019, right? The Giants won their second to last game against the Commanders, right? They weren't called the Commanders then. They were called Washington Football Team. They won in overtime. Daniel Jones had a big game, and everyone said, the freaking Giants, right? They won a meaningless game. And they screwed up getting the second pick in the draft. The second pick in the draft that year was who? Edge rusher Chase Young from Ohio State. The next generational edge rusher, right? They needed him. They didn't get him. They screwed themselves out of that pick by winning a meaningless game, the second to last game of the season. So the Giants fell all the way down to 4, and they had to settle for some offensive lineman from Georgia, Andrew Thomas, right? How did that work out? Andrew Thomas's career versus Chase Young's career. How did that work out? Don't tell me draft picks are vitally important. They are after the season. Draft picks are for after the season. Now, if you need a franchise quarterback, okay? If you need a franchise quarterback and you can get the first pick, I'm not saying you should lose, but there are different mechanisms in place there. If that's it. If the Giants don't have a quarterback and their scouting is saying Mendoza's going to be the next whoever, my gosh, we love this kid. Okay, do you take some measures in the 18th, in the 17th game of the year to kind of play hard with backups? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. You know, it's sickening to do it, but maybe you do. The Giants don't need a quarterback. Don't tell me they need to get the number 1 pick. Now, I think if they got the number 1 pick, they would trade it anyway.
Absolutely.
So if they get the number 3 pick, I think they'll probably trade it anyway to get more picks. So follow the games during the season, then worry about the draft.
Yeah, and I tell, you know, the fans that I go back and forth with at times in the group chats and the DMs, what type of message are you sending to that locker room if you say, hey, we're going to bench the guy that's the future that needs to develop so we can lose games, so hopefully this guy that we're able to draft, the first overall pick, can come in and be our savior? And they always come back to me with, well, we look at the message now. They're already losing it. So what does it matter? There's a difference, though, between going out there and trying to win football games and losing, as opposed to saying, hey, guys, we are packing it in. So if you have ownership of a GM and Joe Shane or Mike Kafka come in and have that conversation, and then Dexter Lawrence or one of those guys gets wind of that conversation, if you thought Malik Neighbors was upset when he thought or questioned what are they doing in terms of winning that Detroit Lions game, then what do you think he's going to be tweeting, or the attitude that he's going to have when he catches wind that they're not trying to win around here? These dudes are not serious around here.
You know what, Brandon? It's not even catching wind. You were a player. You didn't need to catch wind of it. You know it. Right? You know it. I mean, did you ever look a coach in the eye and say, Coach, I don't think we're trying to win this week, right? You know, I would guarantee you've never felt that way.
No,
is that
ever,
correct?
Ever. Not even in Pop Warner.
You would know it. You would know it in the practice, in what they're saying, and you would say, I don't know. If I were you, if I was a player, I would say, I'm checked out, man. Yeah. I'm not doing anything on that field. If they're not trying to win, I'm not trying to win. You know, if you're going to put me on a field, I'm going to check out. I'm going to run half-ass routes. I'm going to, you know, I'll tackle a guy, but I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to do anything extreme. I mean, you can't do it. It's just not, it's not, look, I know fans are fans and players are players. I get it. And here's another thing. Like it or not, John Mara wants to win games. That has been what his father told him. And you know, and I remember Wellington Mara used to say, and John Mara is a believer of this. He said, if we start thinking like fans, then we should be sitting in the stands next to them. Okay. Now, he wasn't ripping the fans. He's just saying, we love our fans and appreciate our fans. And Wellington Mara despised going to games late in the season and seeing 25,000 empty seats, right? He always said, booing is much better than apathy. I want them showing up, booing us, as opposed to not showing up. Apathy is a killer for a franchise. But he said, if we start thinking like fans, we might as well be in the seats next to them. And John Mara feels the same way. And like it or not, that's what this franchise is.
So when you break it down like that, the next 3 games of this stretch run are winnable games. You got home versus the Commanders, home versus the Minnesota Vikings. You go to Vegas, don't know if that's on a Saturday or Sunday just yet, and then the Cowboys come into town to end the season. The schedule eases up a little bit now, Paul. I don't want to necessarily call it pressure or meaningless games, But how are you watching these next three? Let's just keep it to the next three with the bottom of the NFL type teams. How are you watching these next three games?
I talked to tight end Theo Johnson the other day in the locker room, and he said the word, these games are opportunities.
Mm.
And I think that was a good word for a player to say. They're opportunities for us because, and I know what that meant. And I looked at him and I know what he meant it meant. You know what I mean? That if they were playing, the Packers this week in Green Bay, I would, that is an opportunity to win, but it's more likely an opportunity to lose. The Commanders are 3-10. They have lost 8 straight games. Okay. The Giants are 2-11. They've lost 7 straight games. If the NFL could flex this game to 9 a.m., they would have, I think. I mean, they have to leave it at 1 p.m. How am I looking at these games? There are jobs on the line, and there are jobs on the line. I think Joe Shane, it would be better for him. I don't think fans want to hear this either, but I think it would be better for Joe Shane if the Giants won some of these games. It's not like, I don't think ownership is saying these are meaningless games and, the die is cast with him, yay or nay. I don't think that's the case. The Commanders are bad and they're playing with a backup quarterback. You're playing at home. Why shouldn't you win that game? You said winnable games, and I kind of cringe when you say that because for a team that's 2-11, is there such a thing? Well, yes, there is such a thing this week. 3-10. The Vikings are 5-8. I think that's a little bit misleading. We know they've had huge quarterback issues, tremendous, but I think they're kind of a pretty good team. They were a really good team last year. They're a pretty good team masquerading as a bad team right now. And you have the Raiders 2-11 who, are one of the 3 worst teams in the league, and you have to put the Giants in there as well. But I think, you can make a case for the Raiders being the worst team in the league, and I don't think Las Vegas is going to be a hotbed of Raider Nation, ferocity. I think the Giants will have fans there. Yep. So, yes, these next 3 games, you said it eased it up a bit. This is the first time all season the Giants have had this. The Giants have had consecutive back-to-back games against losing teams. So, the Giants are a losing team too. So if they want to be the worst of the worst, they'll lose these games. If they want to say we're not judged by this company, then they'll win some of these games. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, just win, baby. They got to win these games, Paul. Like, I just think about the psyche going into the offseason, talk about trying to get that losing stank off of you. And when you're a guy like Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, I know Brian Burns is only his 2nd year here, but he's played for some losing teams. I don't think he's been to a playoffs his entire career as an NFL athlete. So
he hasn't been close.
He hasn't been close. No. So when you're Wandell and you're up for, you're up for a re-up year, and Cordell Flott, Theo Johnson wanting to show that he is the TE1 that this team needs to have, or he can be for Jaxson Dart. I love the way that he used the word opportunity because it's there for absolutely everybody in the room. And when you think about the Jets, how the Jets blew up, traded Quinnen Williams away, Sauce Gardner. Fans hated it because they love those guys, but when you're losing, you got to go. You look at the Mets, Brendan Nimmo, Edwin Diaz is gone. Now Pete Alonso, everyone's in the uproar, but that core never really won any meaningful playoff games or never got past the NLCS. When you're losing, things get blown up. So you want to try and end on the best note or the best foot as you can when it comes to NFL seasons, because you are going to be judged that offseason about not only what you did that prior season, but what your team did and the impact you had on the winning and losing as well. So it's unfortunate that we're here, but at the end of the day, the show must go on, and the Giants got to put their best foot forward for the next 4 weeks. Thank you all for watching the Blue Rush preview show. We're going to have the post-game show live right after the Giants-Commanders game on Sunday. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brandon London. Thanks for watching Blue Rush.